friends, Tiffany here. Welcome to my quilting life. So we're on month 13 of the sew along for the 4-Star Generals Revisited by Kindred Spirits for Yellow Creek Quilt Designs pattern. Can you believe it? It took 13 months for me to say that without looking at it. So we're on month 13 of this, and this month is the border. Oops, wrong paper. This right here. So usually I wait till I piece the block to show you guys this, but we're working on those border pieces all the way around. And there are 36 pieces to the border. They are half blocks. They turn out a certain size. The instructions on this are quite screwed up, to say the least. And it wants you to use your scraps. And this is why I'm explaining this now as opposed to looking at the table like I usually do. But this wants you to use up your scraps. The scraps that I had weren't the scraps that they're expecting you to have, that they think you're going to have left over from cutting everything. So the scraps I have are what's left over. Can you see all this? This is what's left over from my fat quarter bundle that I used to put this together. Now, I don't think I ever told you guys the line from this, just in case you were curious, and this fabric line doesn't exist anymore. These are from Blueprint, and they're called Fractals. That's the line, Fractals by Blueprint. But I mean, you could probably find this kind of stuff on Etsy if they still have it. This stuff is still circulating around, but just know that the Blueprint and Boundless lines don't exist. They are not there anymore. So they're called Fractals. That was the line I've been using this whole entire time. Anyways, back to the block. So these half blocks, they wanted you to do a certain kind of measurements. I can't give those measurements. But their measurements was for cutting from scraps. I didn't have that kind of scrap from all of this. The scrap that I had was little tiny cutoffs that I turned into little tiny blocks. Let me show you. Those little tiny blocks are these guys right here. Do you see these little tiny things? Look at my finger against it. They are super small. So my scraps were this size. I was only able to save these and then obviously all that waste from cutting around our blocks. I didn't have scraps like they're saying you're going to have in this pattern. So what I went and did, and this is what I'll be able to give you, is I changed all the numbers. I changed the math. I figured it out on my own. My block came out the right size, but I did it totally different than this pattern page in the book, or in the pattern, tells you what to do. I did not use their measurements, so I used my own. So I will actually be able to, during this border, tell you the measurements that I changed everything to and how many pieces per block we're cutting. So the 36 part you'll have to figure out on your own because I can't give away that much extra because that is from their pattern. But the actual sizes I cut, those are my sizes because their sizes was an extreme amount of waste if I would have done it not from scraps. So I just said, hey, let's change this up. So I'm going to give you my measurements and tell you what you need per block, and then you can go from there. So we're making 36 blocks, and we're going to make all 36 blocks in this video. I'll show you how to make one or two because that's just what I do, and the rest, we're just going to let the time go all the way through, and you'll see me moving around like crazy, like always, and then obviously it'll slow down when I get to the end because I'll have to, say, hey, look, I did all 36 blocks. So technically I'm not making 36 because I made 3 to make sure that my numbers were correct because I suck at math and I really had to make sure that my numbers were correct. So without further ado, let's go down to the cutting mat and let's see what we can do to resolve the problem that this pattern had with these pieces. All right, so here we are. This is the block that we're going to be making, which is technically a half block. Again, these are the fabrics I cut from, and I left them here so that I can show you what I did. I'm not going to cut another block's worth out, but I'm just showing you what I did. So all of these blocks require a main fabric and an accent 1 and an accent 2, as well as your background. The whole entire pattern, the background has been pieced with light colors. That's what the background says on the pattern, to use lights. I did not do that. I did the dark so that my colors pop, which you guys have noticed throughout this series. So again, this is going to be accent number 2, accent number 1, main color, and our background. Okay? So when I'm referring to these, this is what I'm referring to. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to grab enough to make a block right here, and we're going to show you what I did. So my main fabric right here is my main fabric. This is a 3.5-inch square. That's right, I'm able to give you the measurements. This is one 3.5-inch square. So I went through and I grabbed what I wanted to be the main per each. Since there are 3 colors each, there's 3 different fabrics. I paired them up, and as you can see, they are all ready for me to sew. So they're all paired up and ready. So this is a 3.5-inch square cut on the diagonal twice to create this, because what we want is the straight grain right here on all of these pieces. And the pattern even says the way to cut it. They want you to cut certain scraps with the straight grain. So I did my math so where I still have straight grain when piecing. So here's our main fabric. It is a 3.5-inch square. So cut a 3.5-inch square from whatever fabric you choose to be your main. Then we have our background fabrics. And actually, I'm going to start laying this out as we go through this. Make it easier. So from my background, which would be my black fabric or your light fabric, we have a 2-inch square of your background fabric. So it's a 2-inch square cut on the diagonal 1 time. That 2-inch square cut on the diagonal once, it's going to go here and over here to create a flying geese. So again, it was a 2-inch square cut on the diagonal 1 time. Then you're going to take your background fabric and cut some 1.5-inch squares. You need 2 1.5-inch background squares per block. Then your accent 2, right here, you need 2 1.5-inch squares of your accent 2, which goes right there. From your accent 2, you will also need a 1.5 by 2.5-inch piece. From your accent 2, you will also need 2 2-inch squares. We're not cutting those right yet. And then you need 2 2-inch background squares. This is per block, so you guys can do the math on that. So 2-inch background squares and 2-inch squares for your accent 2. So you need 2 of those per block. These are going to be what we put right sides together, just like this. And we are going to draw a line from corner to corner, and we're going to sew on both sides of that drawn line with a scant 1/4-inch seam allowance. So we're just going to set those aside. Then from your accent 1, now this is the part where I had a little bit of waste, but I was pulling from other accent 1 colors, if that makes any sense, so that I only had to cut smaller pieces. So you're going to take, this is part of a 3.5-inch square. So the same as the main fabric, I cut a 3.5-inch square. Then I cut that on the diagonal 2 times. So that way I had 4 pieces like this, and every single one of them I can use, because if I used this as the accent in 3 more of my blocks, then I can just pull from these and only have to cut 1 of the next size. So that's my accent 1, and it was a 3.5-inch square cut on the diagonal both ways, the same way you did your main fabric. And then I just put the other ones aside. I will have leftovers, but I'm going to make something out of all my leftovers. And last but not least, for your accent 1, you need 1 2-inch square cut on the diagonal 1 time. Again, this is for accent 1. And these are going to go on this side of the flying geese unit. So we're going to go again through this. My background fabrics, we have per block 2 1.5 by 1.5 inch squares, 1 2-inch square cut on the diagonal once. Oh, and also this. This was, I forgot. Look at that. And then this is also a 3.5 inch. So this other background, the last of it, or my light fabric, it's a 3.5 inch square cut on the diagonal twice, and I only had to cut enough to have 36 pieces, and I just kept pulling from the pile. I had a remainder of 3 or 4, I think. I don't remember. When I started cutting them, I think I went over. I don't know. Either way, I had a couple left over, but we need these background squares too. So just, I think it was 9 blocks I cut to get these. 9 3.5 inch squares cut on the diagonal twice to get all of the pieces for every single block for that. So background again, let's start all over. 2 1.5 by 1.5 inch squares, 1 2-inch square cut on the diagonal once, and a piece of a 3.5 inch square cut on the diagonal twice, and just using one of the units from that. Then the main fabric is 1 3.5 inch square cut on the diagonal 2 times, just like that. Then my accent number 2, 2 1.5 by 1.5 inch squares, 1 1.5 by 2.5 inch rectangle, and 2 1.5 and 2 2-inch squares that we're going to sew on the diagonal line. And then last but not least, from the background, 2 2-inch squares of background for the half square triangle parts. So there that is. Hopefully I didn't confuse you guys, but this is what we're going for right here. So let's go over to the machine. I'm going to move all this out of the way, but just know I grabbed 3 colors and said, oh, those 3 are going to go together. And then I grabbed 3 more and said, oh, those 3 are going to go together. And everything that I had a leftover from, I pulled and put towards the next one. So all I had to do was cut another little piece, or you know what I mean? So that way I was able to save as much fabric as possible. You guys know I'm all about saving fabric. So without wasting, these are a better measurement so that there's little to no waste. And you're going to see right now when we start assembling this that there's literally no waste. It's just barely there. So let's go to the sewing machine and start. All right, guys, so you can see I just brought all the pieces over to the machine bed or my extension table. So that way I don't have to get up really during this process. And then we'll move on to the next step. But for now, as you can see up here, right there in this top corner of the screen where I'm pointing, those are my scraps that I was talking about left over. So I could actually put all those together into hourglass units like this with all those and use them with my tiny pieces that are in my package of actual scraps that I've actually been sewing into hourglasses. So I could actually just continue on making more hourglasses. So that's not really much of a waste on my end. All right. So for this first part, normally we draw a line from corner to corner. I actually have seam tape that has that center line and the 2 1/4 lines on each side. I am not going to draw a line. I am just going to sew a line from one side to the other, lining my points up with the 1/4 line. So we're just going to do 1, and then we're going to line up the second one and push that through. Just like this, and then we're going to turn them around. Oops, don't knock anything, Tiffy. And we're going to sew the other side of the drawn line. Again, if you have seam tape, it makes this so much easier because you don't have to take the time to draw 500 bazillion lines because there's a lot of pieces here. Then what we're going to do is snip them apart, and we're going to cut from corner to corner in the center, giving us some half square triangle units. Okay, so we're just going to separate these apart. I'm going to do most of it with the rotary cutter, but I didn't want to move from this position. So right now I'm just going to set these aside because I need to trim them to 1.5 inches. So we're just going to put them over here because I trim them before I press them. Then we're going to take these guys right here, and we're going to put my seam guide back there so that I can sew it. I'm literally sewing a scant 1/4 inch. And if you don't know what a scant 1/4 inch, it's literally 2 hairs, 2 thin hairs in. So if you want a 1/4 inch seam, here, we're just going to use this little piece of paper. And do I have a pencil? Do I have a pencil? No, no. I have a marker. Why not? So here is your fabric right here on that red line. And you need a 1/4 inch seam, just like this. And that's your 1/4 inch. What a scant 1/4 inch is to the inside of that, closer to your 1/8. So we'd actually be sewing this way more instead of outwards. So your regular 1/4 inch would be this solid line here. You want 2 hairs in towards the outside of the fabric, not towards the inside. So when you're creating your seam, it's just a little bit smaller. That's a scant 1/4 inch. And that marker was not very bright, but hopefully you guys saw that because I am not looking at the camera. All right, we're going to take and do one side first. We're going to take this corner because it's going to go on like this, and we're going to line this corner up here with the bottom edge. So you are going to see that this top edge, let's get that on there nicely, just like this. You're going to see that the top edge sticks out a 1/4 inch. You want that. Keep that there, just like that. That's what you're looking for. We're going to sew that on with that scant 1/4 inch. So if we measure this against a 1/4 inch right here, line that up, you can actually see that my seam is smaller than the 1/4 inch line when the fabric is lined up with the edge. We are looking for that scant 1/4 inch. I know some people don't do that and they're not used to it, but that's what we're working with. All right, I'm going to cut away that dog ear, and we're going to take this other side, and we're going to line this short edge right here up with the long edge, just like this, essentially creating a flying geese unit. We're going to turn it around, and we're going to sew that. Again, it's hanging over. That's good. So here's my 1/4 inch seam, or scant 1/4 inch seam. I'm going to go ahead and press that back, and that looks amazing. So we're just going to set this aside now because we've already sewn it. And then we're going to take the other one, and then we're going to do the black first. I always do the black first because it's a dark seam. Anyways, sewing scant 1/4 inch. We're going to press this back, just like that. And we're going to go on this side with this one. We're lining up the short end on the long end of the big piece triangle, and then the long end on the short end. And I forgot to cut that dog ear off at the same time. I'm trying not to have as much bulk as possible behind all this. And don't worry about all the rest because we're going to get that in a few minutes. All right, one more thing to to sew. We've got this unit right here. So we have these pieces that look just like this. Just remember, your background is on top, your main fabric is on the sides, and your accent number 1 is on the bottom. What we're going to do is take these two right sides together and these two right sides together, turn the whole unit like this, line them up, and sew them. Again, it doesn't matter if this is a scant 1/4 inch. I'll tell you most of the time if it is or if it isn't. This one, it doesn't matter. I just leaving my scant 1/4 inch seam guide in the way. So there's one, and then we're going to take this one and put it right through afterwards. All right, we are going to finger press this towards the black, or my background. If your background is really, really light, then I'd say press towards the main or press towards the darkest colors. So, and I'm going to press this one the opposite direction. Now, these seams are in opposite directions, so when I put them right sides together, You can see that they are going to nest beautifully. And this is just with finger pressing so far. And I'm going to sew, holding that center seam. And now that is fully sewn. And you can see it lines up beautifully. So, but I'm going to leave this folded in half because let's go to the table and do some trimming. All right, here we are at the table. Now, I don't know, a lot of you know that I don't trim by opening, I trim leaving it closed. We are going to be trimming this by lining the corner. This is a 2.5-inch ruler, by the way. I want to trim this to where my 2.5-inch mark right here, and we're going to zoom in on this. Okay, here's a 2.5-inch ruler. I want the corner on the seam line. I want this tip right here on a seam line, as well as the 2.5-inch mark on a seam line. Just like this. I'm going to line it up, make sure that's correct. Open and cut. So there's my waist compared to theirs was very, very small. So I'm going to go ahead and when I open this up and press it, and obviously I will take this all to the iron, but that is my block, okay? I do the same exact procedure with the little guys. So these little guys are gonna get trimmed to 1.5 inches. So I'm gonna line this up. This ruler has a 1.5 inch marking from here to here. I'm gonna line the 1 inch mark right here, the 1.5 inch mark down here on that seam line, and then trim it. Again, my very little waist compared to their pattern, which would have been a lot of waist. I'm going to clip the dog ears now before I go to the iron, and I'm also just going to pre-finger press them back. So there's one. I have to do 4 of these. Again, they're 1.5 inch. So if you press first and then trim, do it that way, but I always do it this way. And I should unzoom so you can even see what I'm doing. So there's block 2 pieced, trimmed, and then we're going to finger press for now towards the black. It makes it easier when you get to the iron to keep these super square when you finger press them in advance because they are little pieces. All right, 2 more. Again, 1 inch here, 1.5 inch mark here, and oops, don't move the ruler. Sometimes when the camera is in the way, it makes it a little bit harder for me to film for you guys. Sooner or later, I won't have so little of space. I will be able to open up this room and finally have room to film around me. All right, one last time. Again, this is the accent number 2 and the background or your light fabric that creates these little blocks. I'll cut the dog ears off. That way they're pre-done. And we're going to finger press it towards the black. That's like that. Now for the flying geese units. They're almost the size they need to be. I didn't have another number that worked best for this, so we do have to trim them. But this is really simple. We're going to start by trimming this part nice and straight. And as you can see, it's already pretty straight. So I'm literally just going to lay the ruler on here. You can see I'm touching the tip here and the tip there, so I'm only really taking off that little piece right there, okay? Then, once that is trimmed off, we got to take this and turn it around, facing this direction, and we got to cut this 1.5 inches from the top side that we pieced those 2 triangles on. So again, a little tiny, look at this, little sliver of waist. And the last number that we have to do is I'm going to lay my 2.5 inch ruler literally in the center. So I'm going to line this up with the bottom, line it up with the top, and you can see I'm at the corner right here and the corner right here of the flying geese. So I'm actually trimming from tip to tip. I'm lining the ruler up with the points that I have created. So from trimming it down to 1.5. Now we're trimming it to 2.5. So that way, my flying geese unit still has my 1/4 inch seam up here, as well as it has my points will line up and match because we want these right here on this block to create a straight line from here to here. That's where they're going to be sitting. So we want them to line up. So if you don't trim your flying geese properly and trim that edge off, you won't have that straight line. So again, let's repeat one more time. And just trim this side. So I'm pretty much just getting rid of that dog ear. Just making sure that's out of the way. Then turn it all the way around. So from that side, trim it 1.5 inches. You got to do this first because then you won't get the right center measurement. Get rid of that little sliver. Turn it facing you again. Line the ruler up between the two markings. And if you don't have that, just know you can cut it right here. As long as you have this on a straight line, line up it on one side like this. You literally are so close with this measurement that you get your 1.5 by 2.5 inch piece. So as long as you're trimming from this little corner and getting rid of that excess on the sides, you should be just fine. All right, so we're going to take these over. I'm going to iron them, and then I'll meet you back at the sewing machine where we will start sewing this block together. All right, let's lay out the block. And if you guys didn't notice, I added a little piece of paper with my writing of the measurements for the cuts. Hopefully it was very understandable, just to make a little bit more sense of things. All right, the little half square triangles we made, they're going to go up here and up here, facing in towards the black with the accent color. And again, accent color facing in. So technically you're touching accent to accent, accent to accent, just like this. So you're creating on both. They're the exact same way. If you turn it this way, you can see they're the exact same way. So you can't really mess this up. One just faces one way and one faces the other. So there's that. Then we have our two main fabrics and accent 1 with our background. That's going to be going there. Then we have the accent 2 sitting in the middle. And then we have our main fabric and our accent 1, main fabric and accent 1 facing inward like this. And that one is touching those. So if they are like this, then you have it wrong. You want your main fabric touching your 4 patches. So let's go ahead and sew these 4 patches. We're just going to put these right sides together. They should be exactly 1.5 inches, so you should have no problem. I'm sewing with a scant 1/4 inch because I didn't want to mess it up. Again, I'm just going with what I got going. Everything still works out the same. And then we're going to sew these 2 through. I'm chain piecing it. So while it's under, I'm just going to throw them all through because I know how they're going to go. So I cannot mess this up. I'm going to take these bottom 2 and separate them from the top 2. I'm going to go ahead and finger press towards my background because it's my darkest color and towards my accent 2 like this. And then I'm going to go ahead and put them right sides together. You can see my seams are going to nest beautifully. And then I'm going to go ahead and slide these through just like this. I'm going to keep them on the machine and finger press towards the background, towards my accent, right sides together. Again, they nest. Oops. Be nice if I can hold it straight though. So all the way down. Snip them apart and you should have 2 little 4 patches. And I'm going to just finger press these towards the upward angle, which is towards the background or your not main fabric, your light color, which is background fabric. So we're going to put that there, and now to sew them together. These should finish at 2.5 inches. So we're going to take this and this, right sides together, just just like this. And we're gonna, no seams to match, sew it right through. Again, we're gonna take these two now, right sides together. Oops, come on, get on there. There we go. I'm gonna bring these down to me, just like this, and I'm gonna finger press this inwards towards the, away from the 4-patch towards the hourglass block. And this one, I know you want to press it towards this direction, but we're actually pressing it away from, just like that. Because there's too much bulk this way with this guy right here. There's not with this guy. It's kind of weird. All right, now we're going to grab this one right here and put it on this side. Again, no seam to match here. Just going to line it up. Sew it through. Oops, and I should have just slid that through, but I wasn't thinking just now and broke thread. So I'm going to put this one on down here. Again, I'm going to finger press this one away from that center and this one towards the center. It puts that bulk behind this piece right there. I know it seems weird, but for me it works easier. And now all we have to do is sew them together. So we're going to just take these two right sides together, and you can see these seams right here are pressed opposite of each other. This is what we're nesting up. That is all we need to nest up. The ends should line up perfectly because they're the exact same size. So we're just going to sew this together. I'm just nesting my seam. I come up to the seam, leave the needle down, come down to the next seam, lining it up. It's all the same exact size. I'm just making sure that that seam is fully nested, and it is. And then I am going to press this up. No, I press them down. That's what I've been doing, pressing it down. And we're going to take this to the iron and make it flat. So as you can see, it creates a straight line here and a straight line there. That's why we were really important to trim this block right here, this flying geese, by laying your 2.5 inch between your lines after you cut it into 1.5 inches tall. That'll give you an exact amount so that you have a 1/4 inch on both sides, as well as a 1/4 inch on the top right here, which is going to align next to another border when we get to it anyway. But it also allows you to have this straight unit right here. So I'm going to press this and meet you over at the cutting table. All right, there we have it. So that is the size it needs to be right there. Again, those are with my measurements. The less waste, the better. And all of these are going to come out this size, and mine are randomly going to be mixed down the borders, just like this. So they're going to all be mixed up. And I'm actually thinking of putting a 1-inch sashing between all of mine. So that way there's a little bit of separation between them, but we'll see when we go to piece this together. Right now I'm just thinking out loud. Anyway, because sometimes the things I do is a little bit different. I mean, you could do it, I may do it, I'm not sure, but I just did to give you guys the idea of it. So let's go ahead now that we have done this, and I gave you guys the measurements so I don't have to verbally say it again. There's a block. That is how it's made. How about we move the camera and start sewing all of this? That's right, I'm going to sew it all. Let's sew it all in time lapse.
Step 1, wake up early, gonna rise with the sun. Step 2, get some food in you. Step 3, think real hard about what you want to be. Step 4, everybody just do your thing.
Wake up, today's gonna be a good day. 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 Yo. Set your affirmations, aspirations. I got shit to do, the aftermath of preparation. Good food, good mood, blood in circulation. One step at a time, yeah, that's how you make it. Set a goal you control and the steps you take them. I try to pick one thought, have some concentration. And if I make a mistake, it's called education. I try to do this every day, call it replication. Wake up, today's gonna be a good day. 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 So life ain't easy, yo, I think there's a reason though. Ups and downs, just like every different season, yo. Sometimes I'm high, other times I'm barely breathing, though. I always gotta fight and hide from the demons, yo. Negative thoughts are poison, they ride, Head full of flies, so here come the clouds, They'll never stop unless I can swap all the bad for the good in my head when I'm lost, Yeah, so I'ma fake it till I make it. Positive thoughts are overtaken, I got patience. One day at a time is how you operate a cadence. A flow, you grow, you show yourself a foundation. Stay away from all the shit that causes temptation. I know that I like to do it cause it's sensation. I live my life in my head like a narration. Don't expect greatness, do my best, man, I'll take it. Wake up, today's gonna be a good day. 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 Wake up, today's gonna be a good day.
Wake up, really gon' rise with the sun. Step 2, get some good, some food in you. Step 3, think real hard about what you wanna be. Step 4, everybody just do your thing.
Okay, so I now have 36 half blocks. So now that we have all 36 blocks, the little half blocks though, and I should have used black thread, but I didn't. Anyways, now that we have all 36 of these beautifully, look at that color, beautiful. We're going to take 8 of them, 10 of them, and 10 of them, and hook them together, end. So I'm going to decide where I want them all. At first I was thinking, like in the earlier part of this video, I said I was thinking of like putting a sashing in between them, like a 1-inch sashing, kind of to give them a little space between them. But then I thought, meh, I don't want any extra work because that means I have to cut a bunch of 1-inch strips. Just gonna hook them all together, end. And then once that's done, this step will be ready to start doing the borders. So I'm actually just going to skip that part because I think you guys have watched me bounce around the screen enough putting all these together. That did actually take 2 days and about almost 8 hours of work. My legs are kind of sore. I've been having leg problems, so it just made it a little bit harder for me to do, but I was standing up quite a bit of the time and dancing around to the music, which you can't tell in hyperspeed. But anyway, I was enjoying myself, forgetting about the problems that I'm dealing with and having fun. So they're all made. Next video, which is probably going to post soon after, I'm not going to give it till the 21st of next month. I'm just going to put the next video up after this, not directly, but soon. And we are going to work on the borders of our 4-star generals revisited. We're going to work on the borders and getting those accomplished. Mine are quite simple because I'm just using black. My whole entire quilt, the color is going to float on the back, on the black, on the background. Yeah, you know what I'm saying. Anyways, so get your pieces sewn between now and who knows when the next video will upload, but it will be before next month because I was doing the 21st of every month, but I'm kind of just going to sooner than later because I do have other things to sew along with now. So I have to get those things filmed and I can't be worrying about this guy. So put your pieces together. So 2 rows of 8 and 2 rows of 10. And I'll see you in the next video on how we are going to put all of that together. So until next time, guys, see ya.